the Bruiser in 75.
Dusty Rhodes versus Harley Race, match of the year 1979.
Flair versus Sting, 91.
Look at the Bruiser all beat up.
That is... Oh! Welcome, friends and fans, to the Pioneers of the Independent Networks. You caught Tim and I in our study brushing up on the topic this week. That's right, we're continuing where we left off last week, and we're going to talk a little bit more about
wrestling magazines and their covers.
And what they meant to the wrestlers, to the feuds, and to the promotions. So friends, if you joined us in the past, you know that we cover all the magazines, the wrestlers, the promotions that populated the Mid-Atlantic independent wrestling scene from the 1970s to today. Tim?
That's a long time.
That's a lot of decades, a lot of archives.
A lot of time.
Each week it grows by an extra decade.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that has gray hair in my beard here.
Exactly. You know what? If this was the stock market, the way that we have this made up, we would be millionaires.
Wow. That's something to think about.
It is, but unfortunately, we're just reporters. We're bringing you all the archives that we can. So friends, strap in, join us as we continue part 2 of this great look at pro wrestling magazines. You've been in this for many decades. How would you explain to someone new coming in how to develop that photograph, the photographer's eyes, and how not to be in the way of the action but still capture it?
Well, it depends. These days you'll only get on the ring at most of the independent shows.
Right.
So it's. I never was trained to shoot that genre of wrestling. I started shooting it from the stands at Sunnyside Garden in New York with an 8mm movie camera when I was a kid. Yeah, and then an Instamatic camera. So it was just, it's almost like shooting boxing, because I shot boxing for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
You almost have to anticipate what's going to happen. And it just takes repetition to learn how to do it. There's no schooling that can teach anyone how to shoot action photography. You can have the technical skills, but if you don't have the sense of what might be coming next, then you're not going to succeed at it. And a lot of times, a lot of the wrestlers helped us out. For example, like a superstar Billy Graham would get someone in an arm lock and make sure all the photographers at the Garden would clink, 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 clink before he'd move to let the guy get up. So sometimes it worked two ways, but you can't be trained to shoot something like wrestling, boxing, football, and to get that right shot at the right time. It takes a lot of repetition. It took me many years to get right on the technical end. I had the ability to know what was going on, but if something was one f-stop off or over or under exposure, Mr. Weston would look at the slide and say, "That's very good, but it's too light," and he'd throw it right in the garbage.
Wow.
This one's too dark. Throw it right in the garbage. It's not like today with digital where, if you're one or two stops darker or lighter, you can correct it with a good video, a good audio, good photo editing program. Went through my whole routine there. It was totally different.
Right. Did you find as you progressed and you were seeing more, I guess, TV exposure, that folks that were in the business knew how to learn to work toward your camera as well as the TV camera to help you with those shots?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. There were a lot of, as I mentioned, Superstar Graham was a lot like that. There were wrestlers all over who would stop and pose real quickly because they knew we'd get that great tight arm lock shot or headlock shot, and those made for very dramatic covers.
Absolutely. Speaking of covers,
actually, when I mentioned Superstar Graham, who I love very much, he would put an arm lock on somebody, and he'd go, "Bill Apter, come on, take the shot," and I'd get it. Then Joe Napolitano, come on, and then little wimpy Paul Heyman, same thing.
So he went through the gambit to make sure each and every person got the shot.
Absolutely.
That's a professional, Bill.
Did that.
I think that's an art we're missing today. Again, that's part of the archives of, if we don't talk about it, people don't get the chance to understand the big difference between what was going on in the 70s and 80s, up till today. There's a difference in it.
It evolved. The business has now evolved into 2018.
Right.
It keeps evolving. And if you don't evolve with it, you're left behind. That's how I've been in the wrestling business or sports entertainment business so long, is because as things change, who would have thought 15 years ago that I would be sitting here on a device talking to you 150 miles away?
Right. When you captured the right picture and you knew that it was the one that was going to be on the cover to help sell what was going on with the action, to help draw money for the magazines, bring that in. What were a couple of the simple staples that you always looked for to say that this is the right picture?
Well, again, the guy there in the classic arm lock or a headlock, you just had to be at the right angle, the right face, and hopefully the wrestler was looking toward the camera, not directly at you, but maybe looking out over the fans. That would provide a very dramatic image. But you never know until after you might think. I went back to the office many times, Mr. Weston, say, "How was the garden last night?" I said, I got a picture last night that's going to be the best cover we ever did. And the next day we'd come back and the guy's eyes would be like this. And again, there was no computer to fix that.
Right.
Photoshop to fix that at that point on a computer. So everything was pretty raw.
Which had to show your professionalism. It did, because you had to capture that piece.
Yeah.
So when you find that right picture and you put that on the cover, what over the years have you said, these are my favorites? Because no matter what body of work that you're involved in, you always have a fondness for certain things.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I remember some of them, like this very close-up, tight face shot I took of Mil Mascaras and a black mask. And
wow.
His eyes were wide open like this, and you could almost hear him speaking in that photo. Absolutely. The ugliness of Bob Wire match with Dusty Rhodes tearing open the forehead of Tully Blanchard.
Oh, wow, yeah.
One of those. Championship matches, poses. Magnum TA with that gigundous UWF belt and a beautiful red background.
Right.
I loved posing the guy so much. Chris Jericho would stand for 2 hours if I asked him to. So would Ricky Steamboat to pose in the studio. So yeah, you had the relationship between the photographer and the subject so perfectly down at that time. And once in a while you get a classic action photo that I get of someone throwing someone through the air and you head it up. Remember now, the photo had a scale for the cover.
Right.
You have to put cover lines on it. So when I post somebody, I might be posting them on the left side of the screen of the viewfinder, so we'd have room to put cover lines on the right-hand side. Same thing with an action shot. If you had a guy doing a flying Beal, you'd want to make sure there was room underneath it that you can put headlines through. But I took so many pictures that wound up on so many covers.
Right.
It's so hard to pick just one.
I can imagine. Tim Walker and I had a lengthy conversation for this episode about a lot of the photographs. And we always come back to one notion, and that is the human story that creates the interest. It sparks the interest. It's storytelling in one picture. It's the ebb and flow of a match captured in one picture. And we've always found that it's interesting that if you don't have that human experience and the human involvement being part of this business, you might as well be in a arena that's completely empty. So that's one of the things.
That's why when we came up, if we had a great picture, is it going to sell the magazine without the right cover line?
Right.
Probably not. You know, there are fans who just would buy the magazines for the pictures of the wrestlers. But to get the sale for this, you needed to come up with something, with an angle and a storyline that would marry beautifully together with the cover photo.
Absolutely. And you're right. It is the human involvement, the investment in that story. That's one of the things that's always done.
Just alone with the photo, unless you're just selling a photograph.
Right. Right. Bill, we've got you here. You've given us some expert insight to an art that is, unfortunately, I don't want to say going by the wayside, but it is taking a backseat where one time it was the forefront. I would love to see this come back full circle. I know that the Kappa Press has gone from...
Unfortunately, PWI is still out there. And you
right.
Can please buy that in Total Wrestling Magazine. You can go to their Facebook page and that. But people don't collect magazines like they used to. I used to collect Famous Monsters of Filmland.
Right.
The Wrestling Review, and I cherished those collections. And now when I talk to people, younger people, millennials, they don't collect magazines. Oh no, I get that on the website. It doesn't cost anything.
Right.
The art of magazine collecting, I believe, is pretty much a thing of the past, and that's very sad. And that's why most of the wrestling magazines and even the monster magazines and things like that are not selling like they used to.
Right. Well, and if you speak to folks, and we do it all the time, of our generation, they talk about Forey Ackerman and how great that the monsters were in the film land. And when we speak about wrestling mags, we speak about Bill Apter, and we speak about Stu Sachs and George Napolitano. That's things that are right on the tips of your tongue, of everyone's tongue. And I wish that is a medium that would make a surge, because it always puts something in your hand. Today, the internet is so fast. The days of yesterday with this, it put it in your hands, and you cherish that for a lifetime. Like you said, the word collection.
Absolutely. And, we all read those magazines cover to cover.
Right.
And it's so refreshing now when I go to wrestling conventions and meet with fans that they love to discuss, even the younger fans, they love to discuss the days of the magazines because
yes.
their father or their mother showed them what it looked like, and they're, wow, we had all this action. And it also, by the way, it also helped the wrestler,
right?
Not just for his own publicity in his own territory, but they would get calls from promoters in overseas,
right,
and in the United States that never saw them before, and said, if this guy's in the magazine, why don't we book him? He's probably worth it if they're putting it in the magazine.
A great instrument for developing your career and getting that breath by being able to travel, which was important.
Paul Jones, who was working in Georgia and the Mid-Atlantic area for so many years, when he came to Madison Square Garden for one shot, he and I went out to dinner afterwards, and he said, I couldn't believe how many people wanted my autograph because they knew me from the magazines.
Bill, speaking of books, you have written a very interesting book that's just come out within the last, it was a year and a half?
It's 2 years old.
2 years? Wow, that quick. So
October was years old, so it's almost 2.5 years old.
Wow. But I tell you what, it is timeless when you pick it up. Now, is wrestling fixed? I didn't know it was broke. Tell us a little bit about it. Tell us where our fans can pick that up. And we've got great photos, graphs that we're showing here of it, the cover. Please, Bill, tell us a little bit about it.
Well, I see it there. So first of all, Jim Cornette said the best comment about the book. He says, I don't know what the heck's wrong with Bill Apter. He didn't bury anyone in the book. Looking for a book that's going to bury people, it's not this book. The book has been highly regarded in the wrestling industry by fans. Actually, on the book there's a quote here that in the back, on the back cover, there's quotes from famous people.
Right.
And one of my favorite quotes here is Bill Apter, the true Hall of Famer, if you will. Before social media, the coverage of what he did was what helped make so many careers. You helped the American dream come true. Thanks from the dream, and that was Dusty Rhodes in 2015.
Wow.
There's quotes from Shawn Michaels, Triple H, Stone Cold Steve Austin, The Rock. The Rock. What's your name again?
Exactly.
It's going into the Hall of Fame. But this book discusses my career as seen through my eyes.
Right.
My travels and the good things and the bad things that happened through my career. One of the bad things when Randy Savage legitimately made me fear for my life.
Mm-hmm.
One of the good things is one of the chapters is how I hooked Jerry the King Lawler up with Andy Kaufman.
Right.
But the key and the ignition for that. And there's also stories in here about some of the people that I met in show business, like Dick Van Dyke. And it's just an interesting read. And it doesn't follow any real... Well, you don't have to read chapter 1 to read chapter 2.
Right.
You can open it up, go to the bathroom, sit there, and just pick out any chapter. And there's some great photos, both in color. And, for example, here's me with Hogan.
Yes.
Hollywood Hogan. And on the bottom is me. It's the Heartbreak Kid with
Shawn Michaels.
older.
Right.
And yeah, it's a great package, I believe. And there's also an audio version where I did the entire book for Audible. So if you go to audible.com or amazon.com, if you don't want to get the book, you can get the audio version, play it in your car when you're going cross country. It's about 9 hours.
Wow.
And, I'd never voiced a book before, and it was a lot of fun. It really was. And I do a lot of my voices in the audio book. And the book is available at amazon.com, of course, barnesandnoble.com, and mostly your favorite bookseller. There are still bookstores around.
Right.
I don't know for how long, but Barnes & Noble has got it. Books A Million has got it. So yeah, please go to your favorite bookstore like you used to go in the magazine days and get a copy. And if you like it personalized, after you get your book, email me at bapter@onewrestling.com. That's the number 1, not the word. And I will send me your home address. I won't show up at the door, but a personalized autograph sticker to put on the opening page there. And also, please follow me on onewrestling.com and subscribe absolutely free. And this is where all my video and audio interviews are at onewrestlingvideo.com. Now, not only current interviews with a lot of the superstars of today, but I have a collection of probably 200 old audio cassettes back from the 70s that I run nostalgic interviews a lot, starting all the way back from Buddy Rogers to a lot of the day people. And also, don't forget, there are still wrestling magazines, Pro Wrestling Illustrated. Even though I'm not part of the team, I still support them, and Total Wrestling Magazine. And also, periodically, I do some work for Fighting Spirit Magazine in the United Kingdom. So, that's pretty much, and of course, now every Wednesday, 7 p.m. on YouTube Live, and I send the link out on my Twitter page. You can follow me at After One Wrestling, and on my Facebook page, I'm now doing a new segment called All Questions Are Legal, where you can ask me anything. That's Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, United States, of course.
So, Bill, there's a lot of fans that are always interested in that face-to-face, and you talked about autographs. What about something that's current that they'll be able to come out and see you, to be able to meet you, speak to you, get your autograph?
Well, that's great. I will be at the Royal Rumble weekend. I will be all weekend at the Icons of Wrestling convention in Philadelphia. Go to Icons of Wrestling on Facebook. Then February 24th, I will be at Awesome Wrestling Entertainment. Look them up on Facebook and their website in Waynesboro, Virginia. I will be there along with some guy named Ric Flair and J.J. Dillon and some of the Four Horsemen.
Wow.
And it's going to be Ric Flair's birthday bash, and I'm going to be hosting it. So I can't wait to do that. And then NOLA, New Orleans, Louisiana WrestleCon. I will be also booked by Awesome Wrestling Entertainment at WrestleCon. So please come and see me at WrestleCon. And I'd love to meet with you. And if you already have a book, bring it with you. I'd love to sign it. There's no charge for me signing the book there.
Bill, as always, thank you so kindly for everything that you've done here tonight, but also everything that you've done throughout the luminous career, years in this career that you've spent, and you've brought so many joyous memories to fans and workers alike, to everyone that's involved in this business. Great admiration. Everyone I've ever spoken to has had nothing but incredible words to describe the type of person you are. I got to meet you in 2011. It was one of the most proud times of my life to be inducted in the Hall of Fame with you at that time. What an incredible feather in my cap, just to say I stood shoulder to shoulder with the maker of giants. If you really think about it, Bill, I appreciate that.
Team of a maker of giants. And by the way, you used the word luminous, and as my fans know, my favorite comedian was Jerry Luminous.
Jerry Luminous.
Oh, I thought it was luminous. Yes, right.
Thank you again, Bill.
As you know, I end all my interviews the same way I have to do it right now.
Yes, sir.
You at the matches.
Exactly.
Before we let the topic of Bill Apter go, let me say thank you, Bill, for all that you've done for me over the years, all the tips that you've given me, all the help. It was great working with you all those years at PWI. It was just a pleasure, and thank you so much. I appreciate it.
That's awesome, Tim. Because you and I have private conversations all the time. Post-production, pre-production, all about this business, the late-night phone calls, the early morning phone calls. You're always have had Bill with reverence in the things that you've said and said, hey, try this. What do you think about this? I learned this from Bill Apter. I think that is awesome. So when we do talk about pioneers, when we do talk about the godfathers of the independent networks, the movements, Bill has to be considered in that vein as a pioneer, as a godfather of professional wrestling. Even though he's probably never stepped foot in the ring other than to shoot a thing or two, the man has made people left and right to be the superstars, international superstars that they are. All this talk that we've done so far about building into the magazines, that's leading us to a place. And I'm going to step aside for just a second from being the objective fact finder and reporter that we are being here to being that fan of the game that we all really are. Okay. Right? And I'm going to ask you a question, and I'm going to give you my answer, but I want yours. If we're talking about cover photos, friends and fans, you got to remember this about magazines. There weren't just one a month, right? Every week there was a new publication. Just in the Kappa Publishing, you had PWI, you had Inside Wrestling, you had The Wrestler,
Sports
Review Wrestling, and that was once a week. So there was a continual flow of storylines and augmentation of photographs throughout each of those. And that is just in the Kappa Publishing family. There was other families, Wrestling Arena, there was
Wrestling Review.
Wrestling Review. There were so many different ones going on. So you had a plethora of magazines, of printed press to go through, to follow. So with that, there was tons of photographs that went on to catch your eye. What, when you look back over the years from any decade, are some of the famous or infamous covers, and why did they speak to you that said, wow, this is one of the best ever?
Wow, what a great question. I think a couple of my favorite covers would have to be the picture from the 70s of Bobby Heenan just saturated in blood. Just the blonde hair, all bloody, the face completely covered in blood. It was just an amazing shot. And just the horrid look of his teeth, and just the blood caked on his teeth and his mouth. It was just shocking in a way.
Right.
Speaking of shocking covers, one of the more recent ones that I really like from the 80s, and a lot of people find it to be in horrible taste, and it probably is in horrible taste, but it's one of the most shocking cover photos that I've ever seen, was Kamala with his spear, with Hulk Hogan's head on the spear. If that doesn't get your attention, I don't know what will. That's when you remember, and it draws you right there, and you look at it, and you're like, wow, what is this? I've got to read what this is about. Hulk Hogan's head on a spear. My gosh, what is going on here? One of my favorite covers of all time.
Absolutely.
Along with that Bobby Heenan cover. What about you? What did you like?
For me, there is a lot of covers that will never, ever leave my mind. And not only is it just because of the image, but what was said about it. One of them is from November of 1979. And I'm hearkening back to one of my favorite workers in this business forever, Bruno Sammartino. And it was a cover of Pro Wrestling Illustrated. And he had, I forget who it was that he had in an armbar, but the tagline on it was The True Story of Bruno Sammartino by Captain Lou Albano.
Oh, wow.
So not only did the image of Bruno with the armbar, and at that time he had it in the wrong on the right arm, so however you want to work it. But anyway, not only did I see him in there encapsulated in that, but then I was taken back by the tagline on there that Captain Lou was going to tell us some inside scoop. So then you got to see, for me, that was the real exposure to two sides of the story. You know, your best villains don't know that they're villains. They're doing what they think is right. And that's what Captain Lou did in that story, talking about Bruno. So for me, that one will always, always stand out. And not only was it the photo, but it was the story about it. I also give you a second one, another one. I also, and this one isn't my favorite, but this is one of my favorites. Always loved tag team wrestling. Pro Wrestling Illustrated was great at covering and showing there was a whole different dynamic to it. And I loved, I think it was 1985, it might have been August of 85. The cover was the Rock and Roll Express and the Fabulous Ones. Stan Lane, Steve Keirn. Both faces at that time, both good guys. Mm-hmm. And the story of that was very simple. The swapping out of those partners. And if you think about that 85 era, boy, was tag team wrestling at the top of the game. Road Warriors, Midnight Express, Fabulous One, Rhodes, and whoever he partnered with, whether it was Magnum or whether
Manny
it
Fernandez.
was right with Manny. There was so much there.
Fantastic.
The Fantastics, the Russians. It was so engrossing because there was such a great dichotomy, and it was presented in such a fashion that it was on par with the heavyweight championship. So I always looked at that cover and liked it. How about you? If you had to pick one, just one, what would it be?
Just one cover. Well, I am so partial to that Bobby Heenan cover. Mm-hmm. I would have to say that's probably my favorite. But boy, do I remember the covers from the late 70s and the early 80s with Dusty Rhodes and Mil Mascaras on them. And if I recall correctly, the very first issue of Pro Wrestling Illustrated had a picture of Dusty Rhodes and Mil Mascaras on it.
Yes.
Two of the most popular, iconic wrestlers of that period of time.
Right, that's an incredible cover. You don't forget that. An iconic cover because it was the first. It launched a brand. If we're going to talk about launching a brand, to me, the most iconic. Now, it's not my favorite, but I think it is recognized widely by most fans as the most iconic cover of all time. And this goes back to 1982, I believe, or 84. Again, off my memory. As soon as I say it, you're going to remember it. And every fan out there is going to remember it. Ric Flair, three-piece suit, holding the NWA Championship in his hand and the piece of tape on his forehead from being cut in his long battle with his second reign by defeating Harley Race. To me, that's the most iconic cover ever. Ric Flair, three-piece suit, holding that championship, showing the wares of his battle. And I think if you were to poll a number of fans, all fans out there, they would definitely say, hey, that's as a matter of fact, we can do that here.
That's a great cover because that was a time frame where Ric Flair was being established as a national commodity.
Yes. Fans, weigh in on that. What's your favorite? What do you think of the covers that we've talked about so far? I think it's important. Now, one of the weird things, neat things, interesting things, however you want to phrase it, that as a young man looking at magazines that always captured my eye, not just the wrestling action, but there was a time, and I think it was Inside Wrestling Review, that on the cover there was always a quick little inset about apartment wrestling. Tim,
my goodness. Boy,
did I jog a memory there?
That is a long time
Yes,
ago.
it is. And that is something that was done in the 70s, maybe the early 80s, but it always featured apartment wrestling of lovely ladies, scantily clad, in an apartment, wrestling. And it was always submission-type wrestling.
And not in a ring, either.
Not in a ring, exactly. So when you do a little bit of historical research and you come across those things, you always get a smile on your face. You feel a little warm inside.
I guess
and you
so.
get a chance to see some of the different things that were used to attract that 18 to 35 demographic to take a look at the magazines. So they've tried just a little bit about everything to get us there.
Why didn't that ever happen in my apartment?
I know. It's so funny to think about that you always, as a young man coming up looking at that, you're like, wow, wow. But what a great tool. What a great tool. Oh, that's a rib on me, isn't it?
Not especially politically correct, but
no.
But an interesting part of history.
Yes, it is. Yes, it is, and it's always fun to sit back and think about. That was something also that grabbed your eye in magazines. We've covered a lot today, Tim, through the magazines, and especially the importance of that cover photo and what it meant to folks and the stories that it told and how the magazines were built on that. Again, wonderful, wonderful materials. I think I'm a little saddened as we continue this journey in the digital realm that a lot of the magazines have gone by the wayside, which is a shame. I think the fans lose out without the magazines. They meant so much more than just a quick pop from looking at a picture. They told so much more of a story. They told of the professionalism and the expertise of the photogs behind, of the story writers behind, of the people behind it. There was
the
a lot
editors
more.
and the layout
editors.
people.
Oh, Stu Sachs. We haven't even spoke about Stu Sachs and the wonderful work that he's done with putting that together.
I have to thank Stu. I have to thank Dave Lenker. I have to thank Brandy McKevich. All those years we spent working together, just we were so busy.
Yes.
Putting out a magazine every week and a newsletter, sometimes on top of that every week.
Yes.
It was a busy, busy time where we were constantly looking for content to fill the magazines because there was that much demand for people buying the magazines. It was those were some really good times.
It absolutely is. Collectors are still out there collecting. They're always looking for a great mint copy. I could tell you that thanks to Bob Smith in part of my career in those early days, what he did for me.
Your introducing article.
Exactly, with Ed's on, with you, with the help of a lot of other folks that covered what we were doing and exposed Ricky Blues to the world. I thought that was an incredible nod. And that meant, and that's one of the last sentiments that we can talk about. When you got a nod like that, that meant that people were going to look at you and look for you in those organizations. You became that face of. And I thought that was an incredible nod for those folks to do that. So many guys were able to get that. Jimmy Cicero, Hack Myers, folks Buddha Singh, right, who became Balls Mahoney, that helped develop them so much. So what an awesome way of developing and introducing. So wonderful, wonderful medium. Wish it was still there. Wish more people would look for it and look to have it brought back because it's a piece of archive of a great sport that shouldn't leave us. So many great pioneers.
And we have to point out that Pro Wrestling Illustrated is still printed.
Yes.
6 times a year. It's hanging in there and doing a great job, and I hope it continues.
So do I. So I would love to see the medium spread again. Maybe one day if we keep wishing. You know?
Could be.
That would be nice. Ladies and gentlemen, friends and fans, thank you for joining us again this week as we brought you the topic of pro wrestling magazines, cover photos, what it meant for feuds, wrestlers, promotions, the importance of exposing so many folks and so many people throughout the world to what was going on maybe in an area or two or on the national scene. Again, thank you for joining us. I'm signing off. Ricky Blues, Tim Walker. We're taking that stroll down Concussion Lane. When the red light goes out, Tim, I'm rolling up one of these magazines and I'm going to decide to use it as a foreign object to beat you with.
Oh, no. I'll up you one. I've got a coffee cup.
You've got a coffee cup with the
Hulk,
the Incredible Hulk. So, Tim Smash, I can see that coming.
I might be the winner of that one.
Yes, you will. Folks, as we roll our credits, we want you to take a look at some of our choices for fabulous, fabulous Pro Wrestling Magazine covers. Enjoy.